The doc's taking holo photos of his patients. He thinks it'll be a good way of keeping a record for long-term health, as it apparently also takes a photo of their insides. I think he just likes giving people orders. But he's met his match in Naomi Wildman, a character who's swiftly becoming one of my favourites despite only having a handful of outings. The doc learns that being a children's photographer is as much of a pain in the arse as you'd expect, and in order to prove that the procedure is harmless, swaps places with her. Last of the bunch is Kim, and he hangs around to look at the results. Maybe the doc was right about this being useful, as that's quite a lot of data. In fact, it spots things he previously hadn't, like the scarring on Kim's skull. A closer look shows that he's had surgery, with something that looks rather techy attached to his spinal column. Was Kim one of the Cylons all along? Even more curiously, the doc says it was him who performed the surgery, the technique used being one he personally developed, but neither of them remember the event. Janeway's a no-show for her medical, so the doc makes a house call. While he's there, he mentions the surgery on Kim to her and the fact that neither of them remember it. She doesn't either, and there are no records of it having been performed. He says it's from around 18 months ago, according to scans, which would put it around the time we were fucking about with the Borg. Perhaps it could be connected to him nearly being eaten by mushrooms, but then why is there no record or memory of it? He's checking the camera for faults, of course, but wants his program looked at for potential errors too. B'Elanna and Kim are busy right now, but he'll be next on the list. He doesn't fancy waiting and goes to see if Seven can help. After a little cajoling, she agrees and he explains the situation, though adds it was before she joined, so that's the Borg possibility out of the window. She'll help him run a self-diagnostic in an hour when she's finished here. Cometh the time and she visits sickbay. The doc's currently turned off, so she reboots him and tells him she's here to help with the diagnostic he requested. Curious thing though, he doesn't remember having asked for one, nor does he remember the business with Kim's skull surgery. A check reveals those holo images of Kim from earlier have been deleted, as has the doc's short-term memory about the situation too. It would appear that someone is very keen on making sure this mystery disappears. The doc tells Seven and us that he's been quite the amateur photographer for a while, despite it not appearing in any episode before Season 5, and suggests his photo album might have clues about what happened a year and a half back. To the holodeck, where we're going to look through those photos. Or not, as any images from that time have been deleted and there's no record of who did it. Seven says she may be able to restore some of them and manages to undelete parts of 5 pictures. Hello, who's this? Whoever the unknown ensign is, it's her birthday, only neither of them recognise her. The other shots show the ensign on an away mission with Kim and the doc, of which he remembers nothing, and images of a ship approaching them. The final shot is this kid right here, and it doesn't look like they're making a social call. I guess we could go back and ask, but we're now over 20,000 light-years away, and there are rather a lot of Borg in between, so we'll have to solve this another way. There's a bit of good news, though. While the doc has no memory of that time, the relevant files are only restricted rather than deleted, and Seven thinks she can remove the block. His memories come back out of order, the time jumping back and forth between the party and the shuttle we saw in those photos. One memory is of a decidedly crispy ensign, a conclusion that seems to be confirmed by what looks like the launch of a coffin. Memories of the sick bay show Kim with similar damage, and another look at the alien who visited them tells us they pooped white at all 3 of the away team, though the doc was unaffected. When he's done remembering, he wants to talk to Janeway. The doc's presenting his evidence. Neither Janeway nor Tuvok recognize the alien, and nor does Seven. They don't have answers for the ensign, either. Regardless, he says that Voyager's in danger. The fact his memory was tampered with today suggests whoever did this is still around, or at least stuck a virus in the main computer, like the people from Unforgettable in Season 4. Maybe they're related, perhaps explaining why nobody else seems to remember the events either. Janeway's taking things seriously, ordering Tuvok to search the ship and Seven to do science things to find cloaked ships. The doc wants to check all the medical records for any other incongruities, but Janeway orders him offline. She says she'll stick a force field around the main computer and put tamper alarms on his program to see if anybody else tries to fuck about with it, but I don't see why that requires him to be offline. The doc seems a bit confused too, but goes along with it after making sure she'll keep him updated. Those precautions are all well and good, but the doc's a belt and braces kind of guy. He tells the computer to copy his memories for the last 2 days and make a backup, with the order to restore that backup to him if his program is altered. He's also setting a little trap. That holo camera of his is set to capture images of anybody that comes into sickbay while he's offline. Assuming the alterations need to be made in sickbay, the culprit will be on tape. The doc starts his nap and we hear the door open before the computer terminal is used. His files are deleted again, but we don't see by whom. Here's hoping the camera had better luck than us. After coming back online, the doc's memories are restored by the failsafe he created. Time to find out who's been cocking about. Well, that's going to be a problem, isn't it? Time to get to the bottom of things. The bridge crew are having a debate on sumo wrestling, but that'll have to wait, as the doc tells Janeway he knows it was her. Tuvok tries to intervene, so it looks like he was aware of it too. After retiring to her ready room, Janeway doesn't deny having deleted his memories. The encounter with that alien happened, and she says the attack caused a conflict in his program. She refuses to tell him what kind of conflict it was, as she says that'll risk it recurring, arguing that's why she locked his memories in the first place. He's obviously not satisfied with that answer, and is even less chuffed when told that it's going to happen again, whether he wants it or not, saying that he's malfunctioning and needs to be repaired, just as he was a year and a half back. A return to the sickbay suggests others agree. Chakotay and Paris are there, as is Seven. Whatever Janeway's argument, it seems to have convinced even her. Chakotay tells the doc to brief Paris on any experiments he's running so they can be continued while he's offline. Once Chakotay leaves, the doc makes a final effort to find out by asking Paris. The attempt is denied, with Paris saying that he knows the truth and agrees with Janeway's decision, though a look from Seven suggests I may have jumped the gun on her being entirely convinced. Which would explain why she's calling by the captain's quarters at 2 a.m. The situation is troubling her, and she's not subtle in telling Janeway that she's bang out of order. Janeway launches into a speech about how the Doctor is more like the replicator that just made her coffee than either she or Seven, which isn't a terribly diplomatic thing to say to someone who has half a metal head. Rather deliciously, Seven herself picks up on it and compares her own implants to the replicator too. Where does she fit in Janeway's hierarchy of sentience, she wonders. With Janeway firmly put in her place, Seven leaves. It's time for the Doctor's adjustment, and Janeway arrives in sickbay with B'Elanna. Slight change of plan, though. Janeway's had a think and decided Seven was right to call her an arsehole, specifically mentioning that her original decision was influenced by her own biases. You'll love to see it. And that's why she's going to let the Doc know what happened. After a little preparation, we're ready to restore his memories. Time to find out what really happened. We're holding a surprise birthday party in the mess hall for our mystery ensign, who we learn is called Jatal according to the cake that Tuvok is carrying. I wouldn't have expected him to be so involved in the festivities, but maybe he's celebrating the fact that Janeway's letting him wear an extra pip about 3 months before he got promoted. Everybody from the main cast of Season 3 is there, save for Kez, who must have had something really important to do that day. Chakotay grabs the Doc during the festivities, offering him a spot on a few shuttle surveys to get him out and about, and the Doctor gratefully agrees. We switch to a shuttle and the Doc taking more photos when everything starts having a bit of a shake. Systems go offline and the Doc gets a shot of an alien ship pooping blue at us before one of them comes over to say hello in person. Handheld pooping happens and Kim and Jatal go down, but the Doc shrugs it off. Before the alien gets another shot off, the Doc teleports them back to their own ship. A call to Voyager lets them know we're under attack while the Doc tries to treat his patients. Whatever that gun was, it's some serious shit. All of which might not matter shortly. The alien ship returns for another pass, but is dissuaded from further attempts by Voyager turning up and kicking it square in the balls. There's always a bigger fish. They're all teleported to the sickbay, where Kim and Jatal are put on beds by some schmucks who were presumably drafted in to do the heavy lifting, along with Paris. The Doc figures out that gun has left electro-wibblies in the victims to cause neural damage, and it looks like the problem is starting to affect the spinal cord too. He can treat it, but only has time to perform the procedure on one, and it's too complex to talk Paris through it. It must be Kez's day off. The Doc makes his choice and gets to work on Kim, while Paris helps by cupping Kim's left buttock. Maybe it's an important part of the treatment. Waving some flashy things on the back of Kim's neck saves him, while Jatal joins the list of Voyagers fallen. As an aside, given that we only have one Doctor, maybe we should consider installing a stasis pod in sickbay. I'd suggest sticking extra patients on the holodeck for a temporary simulated Doctor to treat, but based on how that turned out last time, we'd probably end up with fucking Harold Shipman. We're back in the present, and the doc is asking if there are any other casualties, and Janeway confirms Jatal was the only one. The doc's a touch confused. It's a terrible situation, obviously, but he's designed to accept patient losses. It's a part of his function. Janeway nods to B'Elanna, and we go back to his memories. Up on the bridge, we're holding a funeral for Ensign Jatal. Janeway says a few words before Voyager litters the Delta Quadrant with a tiny bit more of its biological contamination. We rejoin the doc after the funeral down in the mess hall. He needs some supplies from Neelix, herbs that can be refined into medical compounds. Neelix asks him which he wants first, and the topic of decisions sparks a question. He wants to know how Neelix makes choices, how he'd choose between two alternatives, how to weigh which one is best. It's about himself, of course, the choice he made in sickbay. Two patients with equal chance of survival, how do you calculate an ethical choice for that? As he becomes increasingly erratic, Neelix calls for security. Tuvok arrives as he starts to shout, resisting attempts to take him to sickbay. Tuvok instead reaches for his mobile emitter and shuts him down. Back in the present, the doc has finished absorbing his memories. Janeway explains that his inability to reconcile the choice he made against his ethical priorities caused him to obsess over it to the exclusion of all else, and any attempts to help failed. So B'Elanna says they deleted the memories to remove the cause of the conflict. Now he's in possession of them, the Doctor agrees. He says he doesn't deserve those memories, not after his choice. He starts shouting about how choosing Kim because he was the one that the Doc knew best personally is against his core programming, and becomes unsettled once more. As he offers to help B'Elanna reprogram him, Janeway disables him. B'Elanna's still viewing this as a technical problem, but Janeway's not so sure after the chat with Seven. She's starting to think that the conflict is between what he was made to be and what he's become after 4 years of personal growth. Perhaps denying him the chance to work through that conflict on his own is also denying him the freedom he deserves. Janeway wants more information before making her decision and looks for it from Seven. Either that or she just wants to interrupt her sleep for being called an arsehole. She's the one on the ship whose personal journey most closely matches the Doc, a transformation from one state to another, and a traumatic one to boot. Janeway wants to know if that journey was worth it. Seven tells her that, were she able to go back and prevent Janeway freeing her from the Borg, she would choose not to, despite all that comes with it. Looks like Janeway has her answer. 2 weeks have passed, and that time has been spent with the Doctor on the holodeck. Janeway's allowed him to keep his memories, despite the conflict that this will cause, in the hopes that he can work through it and reconcile his actions. Somebody's always with him to provide another voice if he needs it, which is why she's in there now reading her book. The Doc is debating the concept of predeterminism with himself when Tuvok visits and offers to take over from Janeway, but she declines despite having been there for 16 hours herself. Tuvok leaves as the Doc is building up steam on another train of thought. It's derailed when he notes that Janeway has fallen asleep and he goes to wake her. Noticing that she's unwell, he tells her that she should leave and, after responding that she's busy helping a friend, he assures her that he'll still be here in the morning. The glimpse of lucidity convinces her and she leaves. Once she's gone, he picks up her book and reads some poetry as we fly away. What makes a person? We've touched before on how the rest of the crew see the Doctor. There are those who view him as lesser because his manner of existence is technological rather than biological. The belief that flesh and blood is somehow inherently superior is a bigotry carried by many, despite how laughable such a concept becomes when you realise that this would make the Doctor less valid than a fruit fly. And what then does this mean for Seven? Does each implant and augmentation shave off a fraction of her worth in the eyes of some? It seems absurd that a people who consider themselves enlightened would behave this way, but unconscious bias runs deep, and the treatment of those with prosthetics or mobility aids in current societies shows how easy it is for us to equate different with lesser. The question of the Doctor's right to autonomy is inextricably linked to the question of how he's seen by others. You treat a patient, but you repair equipment. Seven shows Janeway not only that her choice is wrong, but that viewing it as a binary choice to begin with is a flawed premise. It's precisely the sort of thing Kez would have done had she still been around. In fact, it's precisely the sort of thing Kes did do back in the very first season, skewering Janeway's blinkered attitude towards the Doc's treatment by the crew. I said at the time that it was to Janeway's credit that she took Kes's observation on the chin and changed her behaviour, and she does it again here. That unconscious bias is an insidious thing, and some lessons need an occasional top-up. Tangentially, perhaps that also makes B'Elanna's dismissal of the Doc's progress easier to understand due to her being an engineer. She deals with tech daily, and familiarity breeds contempt. If we extend the concept further, perhaps this explains why some doctors treat patients with a similar air of dismissiveness. We've seen the Doc guilty of that on occasion, though perhaps not to the extent of considering them merely as meat machines. When arguing with Janeway, the Doc uses the line, "How would you like it if I operated on you without your consent?" Whilst he's right, he's hardly in a position to judge on that count. He's already pulled that shit himself twice this season, once with B'Elanna not 3 episodes ago, and before that when he tried to ignore the clearly expressed wishes of Borg Jesus to not be treated in the episode Drone. That only failed because he was physically prevented from doing so. If we're generous, we could say the question of the Doc's treatment was more complicated. There's an argument to be made that the Doc's behaviour here is comparable to a person incapable of making an informed decision on their own treatment, giving Janeway a duty of care for his well-being despite his objections. When viewed in that context, overruling the Doc's wishes to not have his memories deleted is potentially more ethical than ordering B'Elanna's treatment despite her objection. But we establish through Janeway's own words that this wasn't her main motivation. It wasn't based on his ability to make the decision, but whether he even had a right to do so. She calculated the Doc's worth as an individual, and the tally came up short, until 7 showed her the numbers she'd missed. I like my Trek messy, and this satisfies that hunger admirably. It's not the first time Mulgrew's done a good job of showing a captain who can change her mind without making it look like weakness or indecision, and we should throw some points at her for doing the same again here. Introspection is a rare enough attribute in the world, and we should celebrate the times it's shown in popular culture as a virtue. Elsewhere, Jeri Ryan puts in good work too. She and Mulgrew are convincing opponents. If we wanted to read more into that, perhaps we could ask whether Mulgrew's resentment at her presence helped give those scenes a feeling of truth to them. To be fair, Mulgrew has since gone on record to admit her attitude towards Ryan during that time was unreasonable. Perhaps that's where Janeway gets her convincing introspection from, too. Robert Picardo makes for a convincing breakdown, which isn't meant to be quite as backhanded a compliment as it sounds. The further behaviour strays from the norm, the more difficult it is to pull off, and he manages it here. It also shows he has the ability to go beyond the abrupt but generally level performance that we normally see as long as the script is up to scratch. Looking at you, Darkling. Now that I've finished gushing about the story, we need to move on to the technical side of things where we have a couple of potential issues. The main one is the timeline. The Doc's deleted photos came from stardate 50979. There's nothing particularly special about that, except that it was just before the episode Scorpion. In that, Janeway makes a log entry on 50984.3, which is only a 46-hour difference. Plenty of time, I hear you say, except it's not 46 hours. That log is made 12 hours after we meet the number species, so it's 34 hours. And we meet the number species after flying 5.2 light-years to Borg debris, which is a 9-hour journey at maximum warp. Janeway actually says to engage at warp 2, but we're ignoring that because it would have taken 2 months. Anyway, that takes us down to 25 hours. But no, it doesn't, because Kes was having psychic shenanigans about the number species for at least 2 hours prior to that, according to the then functional Doctor. So at most you have a gap of a touch over 23 hours. That's 23 hours for the birthday party, the away mission, the treatment and death, the funeral, the Doctor's breakdown, and the memory deletions. Incidentally, it also means Kim would have needed to make a full recovery from neurosurgery and then be on another away mission that nearly kills him again the very next day. That's all possible, I guess, but I think we can agree that it's a bit fucking tight. Oh, and the timeline also raises questions about Seven not recognizing the species that attacked the Doc, Kim, and Ensign Jatal. That argument requires them to be 48 hours from the border of Borg space, but manage to keep their heads down despite Voyager knocking the shit out of them. Doesn't smell right to me, but again, I guess it's technically possible. What rankles most is the fact that we could have avoided both of them by making it a month or so earlier, and the result makes it feel like someone just tossed out a number without checking. Lastly, Paris shouldn't have been present in sickbay at this point. The story is set before Kes left, so Paris hadn't been assigned to take on her duties assisting the Doctor yet. It also implies Kes was okay with them shitting on the Doc's individuality, which doesn't work for me. The reason for all of this, of course, is obvious, as Jennifer Lien was gone when this was filmed, and we're forced to let it go as a result. Sometimes you just have to make do. Just like the last episode, though, these minor points can't drag the rest down. I've made no secret of being fond of the Doctor, so I've a weakness for episodes focusing on him, but even without such an investment, this story deals with difficult topics and shows that even our heroes have flaws. Maybe Janeway will even give him some personal quarters now, but I won't hold my breath. End of episode.
Alright then, the techies say everything's ready and it probably won't do what happened with that chicken again. Or at least not as much anyway. Hey, what a mess.
And they think this will put me back inside Voyager?
Dunno mate, didn't ask, I'm just in it for the giggles. I'm sure one of them said something about a computer or something. Anyway, you were the one that wanted to give this a try, so you can't back out now.
Maybe we should give them the chance to run some more tests.
Not an option, mate. They've run out of chickens. That and the cleaning robots have said they're only willing to clean up one more detonation. Think of it this way, if it all goes wrong, you won't have to worry about it for long. 5 minutes, tops. And really, how much pain can you feel in 5 minutes?
What if we replicated some test packages?
No time for that.
Why not?
'Cause I'm getting bored. Good luck, energize and all that shite.